Position on the field. We have the Coburg side have been a little bit iffy. They've lost 2 games, won 2 games so far, being coached by VFL or former VFL coach and John Nicholls. It'll be interesting to see them performing today. But right now, let's introduce Ted Henrys. And Ted, what do you feel about today's game?
Well, Phil, I agree with you. It's going to be a great game of football here today. It's a testing game for Preston because they always found it difficult to win at this Coburg ground. Perhaps it's the shape of the ground. It's quite a large ground, and it's good for a running team such as Coburg is. I believe that Preston's form to date has been first class. If there's any suspect section of their team, it's probably on their back line. They've had some pretty high scores kicked against them, but they've still been winning. I think their running game will probably prove just a little bit better than Coburg's today, and I believe that Preston will get out of this game, but I do not expect a big margin.
Right, Ted. Well, last time we saw them, Bill Jacobs, we saw that Cooper was a driving force in the centre of the ground.
We certainly did, Phil. We saw Preston looking very good in their game against Dandenong, as outlined by Ted Henrys, and Coburg not so good the day against Sandringham. But since then, they've lost at home to Frankston, which doesn't augur well for Coburg's prospects. But I'm going to lean to them a little bit. I think that they are gathering in confidence just a little bit. Their home ground advantage is considerable, and I think they'll get home in a tight finish.
Right, Ian, what have you got to say about the match?
Well, statistically, Preston have had a more impressive opening to this season than Coburg. They've won 4 out of their 4 games, as you mentioned, and Coburg have only won 2 out of 4. And each game Preston have won, they've won comfortably. They've defeated Caulfield by 69 points, they've defeated Brunswick by 35 points, defeated Dandenong by 93 points, and defeated Geelong West by 32 points. Coburg, they've defeated Geelong West by 40 points, they've defeated Caulfield by 20 points, and they've been defeated by Sandringham and Frankston. So on that basis, Preston's my selection for today.
Right, Ian, if you can see this backdrop moving behind us, we're about 50 feet up in the air here. We have 4 venerable old gentlemen behind us.
Behind us, I'm glad you said behind us. I wouldn't want them in front of us.
holding the backdrop, and I don't know whether you can see them, but the point I'm trying to make is that age prevents steadiness with the backdrop here today.
Age shall not weary them.
Yeah.
Phil, during the week, the state government made an interesting decision to allow the Victorian Football League to have 2 games on Sunday to be played at the MCG. What was your reaction?
Well, my reaction...
I ask you that in the knowledge that you've been associated with association football for a considerable number of years, and of course was involved quite a lot with VFL football.
Well, yes, Bill, and I suppose you could say I was an opponent of the VFL coming into Sunday football for many years, but I think I saw the writing on the wall at least a couple of years ago, and since then I've thought it's been inevitable that the VFL would come into Sunday football. When you have a look at the world trends with what's happening in Sunday sport, and also I suppose the lack of activity from the VFA's point of view over the last couple of years in working towards a stronger Sunday competition. I feel that not enough has been done in that area in the past.
I take the view that the VFA have got to regroup, as it were, and regroup quickly if it wants to remain a senior body. By that, I think, and probably drastically as it may seem to be, I think that they've got to delete certain teams and come back to a competition of probably 12 teams.
I've got no doubt in my mind that this will happen, that they will regroup and First Division will take over, as it should have done some time ago, as the major driving force in VFA football. The only thing I would say here, Bill, although it is a progressive step in my book, with all sports being allowed to play on Sundays, everybody has the impression that it's been a fight between the VFL and VFA. I would like to add this, that a lot of people have forgotten the situation with soccer and other amateur bodies who participate in sport on a Sunday afternoon.
I think the important thing to be retained, if I can put it that way, is for people, from our point of view anyhow, from people like you and I, is for people to keep on playing Australian rules football.
This is right, and I think the VFA have lost their bargaining power now, not only in sporting circles but also in political.
I believe
and when
that.
you start losing your bargaining power in political circles, you've lost a lot. All right, well, that's it. Let's now take you down to Rob Astbury in the Coburg dressing rooms, and he in turn will be talking with John Nicholls.
Very much, Phil. Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to our viewers at home. You're in the right spot today. It's very cold conditions, but I think we're going to have a pretty warm sort of a match for you. We do have the coach of Coburg with us, John Nicholls, in the Coburg rooms, but we also have waiting in the wings, if you'll pardon the expression.
Left wing.
left wing. Federal parliamentarian and the #1 member of the Coburg Football Club, Bob Hawke. Well, Bob, welcome.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you, man.
Seeing it's Mother's Day, we thought it'd be appropriate if you wished all the mothers at home happy Mother's Day.
Yes, indeed. I hope it's a happy day for mothers and all their families. I hope they've been able to gather together and remember old times.
Do you get to the football very often, Bob?
Not as often as I'd like to, because being in Canberra a fair bit of the time, it means that the amount of time you've got at home is limited, and you've got to do a number of things that don't give you the opportunity of getting to the football. But I'm certainly watching the fortunes of Coburg very closely.
Well, we know how wonderful a politician you are. We also know you're pretty good with the microphone too. We've seen you in action with some of those commentators. Yeah. Maybe you'd like to interview John.
Oh, OK, here we go.
You can't get it up.
A bloke about my size too. Well, John, any changes today?
No changes, no.
No?
No, I know it's good to be on the same side as you for a change. You know, you used to, I know you're a keen bloods man, different colours, but it's good to have you.
Well, how much are we going to win by?
Well, we'll win, that's the main thing.
Yeah,
he's doing pretty well. I think we've...
Well, just can I give him one bit of advice?
All right.
Just on the basis of the game that I've been involved in up there in the past week in Canberra, it's been pretty dirty and rough and spiteful. That's on the other side of the house. I hope you'll play it fairer than they were.
Yes, but at this stage you're on the defensive side. You see, I'm on the winning side.
We're moving fast, I can tell you.
All right. Thanks very much, Bob.
Best of luck, John.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob Hawke. All right, Bob, we'll let you go back upstairs with the VIPs, and thanks for being with us. I hope you enjoy the game.
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
All right, John, well, let's get down to the serious business, because it is a big game today against Preston. Undefeated team at the moment. Are you concerned about that?
Well, not really, because, you know, Preston are obviously a much improved side, but I think in the last month we've come along slowly and, you know, we're improving a lot. Our win last week was good. And I don't see why we can't win today, and our attitude's very good, which is the main thing.
John, I've been impressed with your back line, just looking at the statistics. The line that is concerning is up forward. Now, I see Robert Smith is not in the lineup. What's the problem there?
Well, he's had a sore Achilles for about, I think, 3 weeks, and like Achilles injuries are very dangerous in my experience, and not worth taking a risk with, and Robert certainly probably could have almost played today, but he'll definitely be right next week, and he'll be back in the senior side. But today, you know, it wasn't worth the risk with an Achilles. Had it been just an ordinary ankle, you know, he would have played. But no, yes, our forward line, you know, we've had a lot of changes. Obviously, you know, Beattie missing, and Malcolm Collins being gone, Robert Smith sort of being injured part of the time. We've had almost a new change forward line, but our attitude last week was much better. You know, our kicking really in the forward line hasn't been good. We've been getting the ball there often enough, but we can't score.
One thing I'd like to ask you about is Terry Don't. You're going to miss Terry a lot today, because he is a great centreman, and of course in the centre for Preston is a magnificent player in Cooper. Now, how's Williams going to
quite frankly, you know, we will miss Don't, but you know, we've got the Fitzgeralds and the Herberts and these boys coming in, and they're real up-and-comers, and I'm sure that whoever plays in the centre against Fitzgerald, you know, will know he's in for a game.
Right. Well, now, of course, the ruck duel is going to be a beauty too, because Milroy is up against Hurd. The two ruckmen, of course, picked in the state squad.
I believe they're pretty evenly matched. They're both tall and they're both good ruckmen. I don't think there's much in it there. I think, you know, Laurie Burt and our Rovers, you know, are following division and doing very well. So, no, our attitude when we got beaten against Frankston wasn't good. Last week it was excellent, and I know today our attitude's very good also. So, I'm going to be surprised if we don't win.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to a great game. Thank you again, John Nicholls.
Thanks, Rod.
So that's the latest from the Coburg rooms. As you can see, a very confident John Nicholls, and he'll certainly be revving his boys up today. And we'll see the result of that very shortly.
Well, now we're back here at the ground, and at the moment we have the heats of the Dandy Dollar Dash being run. You'll see the qualifying heats come up at half-time for the world's richest foot race, and there's no doubt about it. Dandy Dollars certainly support professional foot running in this state and throughout Australia. The mere fact that it is the richest foot race in the world indicates the tremendous support that they're putting behind it. We're looking forward to this game between Coburg and Preston this afternoon, one in which I think you'll see quite a bit of fireworks, and you'll see some pretty good football with two top sides participating as we see that heat going off. But Rob Astbury now has moved over to the dressing rooms of Preston. So let's go down to Rob once again.
Yes, Phil, they are the Preston rooms we're in, and that's Harold Martin giving some inside information to some of his players. If we can just move across now, we might be able to get Harold. Harold, can we interrupt you for a moment? Right, what were you doing there?
Oh, it's just Wayne's only playing his second game, Wayne McDonnell, and he's an interchange player, Rob, and difficult conditions out there today, and we're just, you know, getting him right.
Right. Well, of course, the interesting thing is that you're undefeated at the moment. You must be pretty pleased about that.
Well, it's far better than what we were doing last year. It's always good to win, Rob, yeah.
And, of course, you're coming up against last year's premiers, so it'd be nice to beat them.
Well, runners-up, yeah.
Well, runners-up, right. The premiers 2 years ago.
Yeah, well, they've been in the last two grand finals, and they're a good side, and they've got a good coach, so... and it's on their ground, and it's difficult conditions today, and the best side that adapts to the conditions will win.
Right, well now, you are undefeated, as I said, but your back line has been very suspect. It's had some big scores kicked against it. Are you aware of this?
Yeah, very aware. Yeah, that has been a concern, but we played very well against the other back line against Dandenong. I thought that they held them to 13 or 14 goals, and that's what we're after again today.
Right, one player I'd like to ask you about, just looking around the room for him, and I can't see him at the moment, Carliff Van. When we last saw Carliff last year, he had an amazing apparatus strapped to his knee.
A brace, yeah.
A brace, yeah. I notice it's gone completely. Is he completely over that injury?
Yes, he is, Rob. You know, we were a bit concerned about him last year, but he's doing very well at present, yes.
And 6 goals last week he kicked. You must be pleased with that.
Well, he's been kicking 4s, and he's been kicking at least 4 a week, even up until then. So that's something that not only Carliff, we've got 3 or 4 other fellas down there that have been doing the job as well. Right.
I want to ask you, and I'll put the same question to John Nicholls about the ruck duel, because, of course, the opponents today in Milroy and, of course, Bob Hurd are the state representatives for the VFA squad. A lot will depend on the outcome of this duel.
Yeah, they're both tall players, Rob, and apart from I'll say that the two, well, with Anderson, the 3 tallest players in the VFA, and actually they had a good duel in the matches, practice match when we played Coburg, so it'll have a vital influence on the game, I think.
Right. What about the roving department? You seem to be undermanned today because you've got Graham Anderson out, haven't you?
Well, Kenny Marks has been doing very well, and he'll do a lot of running today, and you know, we'll have probably set our forward line up. Well, Kenny will be doing most of it, I think.
You will be doing most of it. You're giving away a few secrets. That's not really like you, is it?
Oh, no, don't worry about those sort of things.
We're not going to run into Coburg and tell them, are we?